Well, we're down on Little Horseshoe today, and this is a venue where it's not your average sort of day ticket water, though, is it?
No, it's quite a bit different.
I mean, it was
from that.
formerly a syndicate water, and it's one of them places where accuracy is just, you have to be
key.
Bang on.
Yeah.
Which is one of the things which, well, when I first ever met you, was one of the things which I really noticed that you and your brother both really went into a different league of anyone else that was around, you know, young or old. And I mean, I used to remember watching you down at Baggy Small Pond, going down there just to practice casting to far margins and
basically,
stuff like that.
Before pass a driving test and that, instead of staying at home having a punch up, we used to get the rods, go up to the lake and just like have a bit of a practice for an hour casting.
You used to cast against each other to see who could be the most accurate.
It was used to be like, oh, look at how close I got that one, and the other one would try and beat it, and that's how you
but
sort
you
of
used it on the water which you was fishing at the time, which was quite hard water. Well, certainly for kids of your age, I know that for a fact. I mean, a lot of adults that fish it who think they're carp anglers were struggling big time, and you and your brother were using that accuracy of casting, and you were just basically raping the water. It was just silly amounts of fish that you were catching.
Yeah, I mean, some of them spots up there were so small, if you were like 2 foot to the side of it or whatever, it wouldn't do a bite. You had to be right on it. There used to be little patches of gravel like a foot square, like where you've been feeding them, and they'd come onto it, feed really tightly and then go, and your rig, that's where your rig had to be, because like a foot either side or whatever, it might be in weeds or silkweed, and the rig might be useless. And
you've used that as you've moved on to another water now, which is another local club water, which has got some really good fish, and you had a massive result in January of, was it last year?
It was a few years ago now. In the winter there hadn't been a fish out for about 5 winters on a trot, and just basically see a fish stick its head out, ran round to the nearest swim, lined it up, knew exactly where I wanted it, and put a couple of rods out there. And next morning I had 2 fish. The first one was a 37, the second was a 28, and that was both from the same rods on that exact spot where I see that fish jump.
And you had a few more fish in the next...
Yeah, over the next few months I had another 4 fish out.
And normally, I mean, if you have 4 or 5 fish in the season out of there, you're doing all right, aren't you? You're up around sort of the top rod sort of mark, and you'd done that.
Yeah, that's it.
About 8 nights or something stupid like that, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I had a couple of like 33, 35 in the same day as well. It wasn't all from one swim either. Like, I kept moving around with the fish because it was winter. They were generally grouped together, and because there's a few ghosties in there, climbing up trees like well above the water. You can look down, pair of Polaroids on. You can usually see like pick out the paler coloured ones, and like be looking for a while, and another shape would appear, then another shape would appear. It'd be like darker ones, like mirrors and commons underneath them, like. So you think, yeah, that's a spot, and go from there really. But
that's the thing with the observation. Once again, you can't keep saying it enough.
No.
Is observation is the key to catching fish.
I know one mad winter you had over at Sandhurst where you said about you had a bit of tape on your line, and if that tape, was a bit too far out, or you dropped it a bit too short, you wouldn't get a bite. The tape had to be...
I had 29 fish over 3 nights, 3 separate nights, and 27 of them fish came off the one rod.
Yeah.
It had to be exactly the same spot.
They were so grouped up and used to feed on that tiny spot, and it was just that one rod doing it for you really, weren't it?
We don't use any sort of fancy rigs or anything like that. We keep things as basic as possible. I think that's one thing that everyone thinks, that someone who's successful at catching has to be using the latest rig that takes 50 different components to make it up, and half an hour to tie it up, whereas we don't, do we?
I mean, generally speaking, a good rig, it ain't necessarily one with sliding bits and pieces. A nice sharp hook, a nice straight hook link, and bits of putty on it to keep it pinned down there. They're like the 3 most important things really.
But it's basic and it's quick to tie, and that's one of the things it has to be.
That's it.
And the more complicated you make a rig, the more things that can go wrong with it.
Exactly, yeah.
And I think that's another thing that a lot of people make the mistake of, that they think they've got to tie the latest rig that they've seen, and it's not actually like that, is it?
Yeah, and you've got to take into account as well, like the nuisance fish playing around with it and things. Will it stay like tangle free if they spit it out?
It's fine with some of the rigs that I've seen. They're fine if you're dropping them in the margin. You can see how the fish is acting around it and whatever. But if you can keep it as basic as possible, there's less things that can go wrong with it.
Yeah.
And I honestly think that that is the one that people do make the biggest mistake on.
Yeah, I mean, my favourite rig, especially what I'm using it up here at the moment. There's a lot of silkweed out there, and I lost a couple of fish due to like the silkweed just clogging around the rig. So I've had to alter things slightly, and like I went from a sort of inline lead, drop of inline, to like a helicopter. But I've slid the top bead up and had a little stick on, which should float the hook link up above any weed and that. And then as the air comes out of the stick, it will slowly sit down on top of the weed, and then when it melts, a little pop-up will sit above the pile of food and just like keep all the silkweed and that away from the hook, just like a little carpet around the
exactly.
pop-up.
The pellet will help the silkweed to lay down, or whatever you're putting in there.
And it worked, because after doing that, put a rig out to a show and fish away from the spots I've been baiting. Again, like location, observation and that.
Just changing little tiny things, like tweaking little things. If you notice, if you bring it back in and there's silkweed over the hook, change it, or you could even change to a solid bag. Solid bags are brilliant.
Yeah, solid bags are good, yeah.
Yeah, because they will lay down in it, and then when they burst open, pop-ups just sticking up over the top.
Yeah, that's it. And if you put your lead on the other sides of the bag, if you put your lead on one side of the bag and your hook bait on the other, then obviously the lead will fall first.
Yeah.
And the hook bait will be well above and out the way of the weed and that.
Yeah, I like when it goes towards winter time and that. I mean, that I use a lot of maggot and stuff like that, which is really, I use really small hooks like size 10s and whatever, which is probably one of my favourite baits throughout the winter. I use it and whatever. But towards the winter time and that, do you go for brighter hook baits or?
One thing that I think's been a massive edge in the last few winters I've done, especially on day ticket lakes, is glugging your PVA sticks and bags.
Yeah.
I mean, the Maplate is just awesome in the winter. If you can glug it in that, whack it out there, it can outfish my other rods easily any day of the week, and it saved me a blank so many times. Like, I favour like the Cell and the Maplate glug really for my bags and that. So yeah, it's just a real good tip that I think more people should put into their fishing.
Yeah, the more effort you put in, the more you'll get out of it. I don't know how you could sort of describe it. The amount of times that you see people being lazy fishing.
Yeah.
You've paid good money to fish a water, so if I'm paying money, I'm going to fish it as hard as possible. You've got to get your money's worth out of it.
Yeah.
If you want to go camping, go to a campsite. If you want to go fishing, fish it.
That's it. The amount of times I've heard, I've just come to get away from the missus and the kids. I don't care if I catch, but then again, like if you do catch and it's a fish of a lifetime, then you wouldn't complain about it, would you?
If you I've moved many times even in a single night just to get on the fish, but I've got on them eventually.
Yeah.
And I've seen people sitting behind rods, and they've been there for days and days on end, and they'll say, oh well, I'll put bait out there, the fish will move on to it eventually. It doesn't work like that always, does it?
No, it doesn't. It can take ages for them to get on it, and if they're showing up the other end and you're sitting there on your bait, that's something that quite a few people find it hard to pull away from. If they've stuck out 5 kilo bait accurately onto a spot and they sit there and the fish are down the other ends of the lake and they won't move because they think it's all going to happen, like everything's
perfect. I quite often see people who've done that topping up with bait and then still not catching.
That's it, yeah, but when someone turns up, sees a fish up the other end, just puts a couple of bags out there and bang, he's away, and he could have a good few fish out. Whereas mate over here, he's like blanking away. Been here for another couple of nights more than what matey has been, that's just turned up.